to get to. We've got a question that takes us to the health inequity issue, and very targeted one from Claire Boardman.
Thanks, Tony. My question for the panel maybe is to reframe the issues a bit and challenge some of the assumptions. Australia has the highest the highest rate of rheumatic heart disease in the world. It's a disease of poverty and social disadvantage, and it occurs almost exclusively in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. It's a disease that is almost gone from memory in the early days of Melbourne and Sydney in the 1930s. By far the highest number of cases are in children who have often required open heart surgery as a result and painful injections for as long as 10 years. RHD is preventable. It's one of the causes is simply overcrowding and housing and living too close. Surely the millions of dollars that have been discussed today about putting toward a plebiscite could be spent better elsewhere. So the question for the panel is, how can we work to eliminate another national shame, which is that successive governments have accepted a much higher rate of disease in Indigenous versus non-Indigenous people?
Christine, I'll start with you.
Oh, thanks. I'm sure Warren will want to chime in here as well. I mean, it is a shame, and it is something that we should all be working on addressing. I wanted to suggest, and it's slightly off topic, that all the millions that these guys around the table are raising in new taxes would be best invested in early childhood, from pregnancy to year 4. And I mean this in the broadest sense in terms of their health and well-being, their level of educational attainment and ultimate employment, and try and break the chain, because we have very, very good evidence that is not being acted upon in investing funding in early childhood education, in home visiting in a way that can target those who are at greatest need, in parenting, and in other ways that can actually help a child reach their full potential. What happens in childhood lasts a lifetime. And if we can improve what happens to our children, I think that will go a long way to changing the social gradient inequity as well.
I'm going to bring Warren in on the specific question that was asked about rheumatic heart disease. Well, I mean, it is astonishing, really, that it still only exists pretty much in tiny pockets of our society and always in Indigenous communities.
It's a disgrace, and the reason it is a disgrace, besides the disease itself, is you're right, it can be simply cured. One of the biggest battles we had, and this is why I get very angry, and my wife tells me I'm sounding like my father in old age now, very grumpy, is Indigenous housing. Indigenous housing, we spend billions. I'm telling you this, every few years we come back and we put billions in. And we end up, you'd be surprised at some of the costs that we have on housing. We spend $500,000 to $600,000 per house. And you go into these communities and you see crap, quite frankly, and you've been in these communities, and you wonder where all that money was going. We did a very simple desktop survey, 2012? Yeah, 2012. And we looked at the $5 billion that was being put into, and I mean $5 billion, into Indigenous housing. And we reckon that there was about a $600 million wastage in that whole process. The biggest challenge we have to have is how do we get more efficiencies within the government? You talked about health. Health's a good example of more efficiencies need to be put in.
Warren, can you just explain why you're linking this disease so clearly to housing? I mean,
it plays a major role.
It's transmitted by close contact. People living in overcrowded conditions.
10, 20 people living in a house. I've been to houses where, you get 20, 30 people living in houses, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom houses, 4-bedroom. This is the type of thing you're getting. You're getting the biggest problem with the Indigenous, with any housing, the things that you've got to look after is the wet areas. Make sure the showers, toilets, kitchens, bathrooms, laundry are right. Everything else about the house is a luxury. You've got 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom. That's just a luxury. You've got to get those wet areas right, and this plays a major role in this area. So we've got to. You sit there and you see the crap that is going into Indigenous house, and as a taxpayer, not as an Indigenous person, as a taxpayer, and seeing my money that is wasted in this space, it is a crying shame.
Why does it happen? I mean, everyone wants to know. The obvious question here is how can this be perpetuated?
Sir Michael spoke earlier about the democracy and about people really don't give a crap. I'll be quite honest about that. That we sat down with the Productivity Commission. We looked at the Indigenous space. $30 billion is spent in this space annually. $30 billion on 500,000 people. And you still see the problems you get to see. What that tells me straight away as a businessman, because I run my own business, is there's a lot of fun and games going in there, and we need to sort that out, and we need to find out where the wastage of our funding was. What I say to people here tonight, if you're really concerned about this space, I want you to write to your members of Parliament. I want you to ring them up and tell them how come all this money's been spent and being wasted, and we've still got these health issues that are happening in Aboriginal communities.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt because I want to hear